seat up here.
Sit right here. Is that all right?
Hey, Ms. Ghost.
Hey, how are you?
Fine. So good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Having the mind in the wrong place. Oh, that's fine.
We have a quorum, so we can get.
We have a quorum.
You do?
We have one more commissioner. I think he's on his way, but we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 10 o'clock. And I want to welcome you to our meeting. But first, I want to give the invocation. If you care to, would you bow with me? Our Father, make us an instrument of your peace and understanding. Grant us the wisdom and understanding to do what is best for the people that we are commissioned to serve. We ask your guidance today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I was expecting a standing room on the crowd. That's what I was told, so maybe they'll come. But anyway, we're glad that the Commerce Department is going to give us a presentation. I have here two names. I don't know if I see both persons. We have Chet Mortarshed, Assistant Secretary, not here. Is he couldn't come. But you are Jenny Harris? Jenny Harris is here. She's the Executive Director of Business Services in NC Commerce. So at this time, we will have the presentation from Jenny.
How well I do. I appreciate y'all being here. I'm Dr. Jenny Harris with the Department of Commerce, Division of Workforce Solutions. And one of the things that I am charged to do by the NC Works Commission, which is the State Workforce Board of Directors, is to help talk to the county leadership about their request for the alignment of the workforce system to be aligned with.
Or you want to grab one? Just take.
We'll see how I do with this now too. I don't know how much they heard, but I'm Dr. Jenny Harris with the Department of Commerce, Division of Workforce Solutions. I am Director of Business Services, as mentioned, and part of my charge right now from the NC Works Commission, which is the State Workforce Board, is to meet with county leadership and talk about the State Workforce Board realignment effort. The goal of it being workforce and economic development being aligned across the state. Please feel free to ask questions at any time throughout the presentation. It's very short, it's very brief, and I'm sure you all have questions. I'm happy to answer anything that I can, and if I can't answer it, I will make sure to get answers for you. So just a little bit of background. In 2015, the General Assembly created the Prosperity Zone model for economic development. That was under Governor McCrory's administration. And you'll see on this slide, can the people that are remote see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you'll see on this slide that we've bullet pointed a couple of the agencies across the state who have moved into the 8 Prosperity Zone model for their representation, for their functioning, for their operations, and for sharing resources out across the state. The Economic Development Partnership, which was created as the economic development system for the state, has a representative in each prosperity zone. The community college system with apprenticeship and customized training has a representative in each of the prosperity zones. And all of these different agencies, their function throughout the prosperity zone is to support economic development activities across the state. Oh, shoot. So at the federal level, WIOA, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, that's the federal law that was also adopted in 2014, 2015. I don't ever remember exactly when that was, 14. That also laid out the federal law that said that workforce services are to be employer driven, meaning that the employer drives the work that is to be done, not the job seeker, which is a little bit different than what it was prior to that. And it also emphasizes the need to be aligned with economic development. Workforce and economic development should be aligned across the state. So North Carolina has had several conversations about this since then. Even before that, they had talked about it. One of the things that did not get done in 2015 is the alignment of the workforce board system and the workforce system itself through this prosperity zone model. And it's, rightly so. It's 23 workforce boards. Now we're down to 22. So we're moving along those lines. But there are 23 workforce boards back then, and that's a heavy lift. The studies that were done all show that alignment for economic and workforce development needs to happen. There have been suggestions on how that should happen, various degrees of suggestions on how that should happen, but they all come back to making sure that that the state workforce system is aligned with the state economic development system, and this is the state economic development system. So like I mentioned, there's 22 workforce boards currently. You'll see in this map, you've got the 8 prosperity zones, which you saw in the last map. And in some of these prosperity zones, there are as many as 6 workforce boards. So when you go back to these agencies that are bulleted there who have one representative working together and collaboratively on economic development projects, education and training projects, they might be in a prosperity zone that has 6 different workforce boards. And as you all know, especially over in this corner, each local area workforce board has its own policies, has its own priorities, has its own funding priorities. And so making a seamless interaction and engagement with employers sometimes can be a little bit difficult in one prosperity zone when there are 6 different sets of policies and priorities. So what the NC Works Commission wants to do, they got together in November at their November meeting, and they decided that the governor wanted to do this. So he asked the NC Works Commission to do a study. The study was 5.5 months long. They asked for a lot of data. They had a lot of questions. They talked to a lot of people. And they decided at the end of March, on March 30th, that they wanted to move forward to align economic and workforce development systems across the state. So what they would like to see is better alignment, seamless interaction, and engagement with employers to provide services. In this model, again, it's a little difficult with as many as 6 in some prosperity zones, but it does not mean that we're saying 8 workforce boards. That will be a Herculean effort that I just cannot do in my lifetime. So some of the challenges that we have in this model here with 22 workforce boards is that the priorities of policies are obviously a challenge for economic development representatives and projects across the state. We've seen several examples of that. A lot of challenges providing workforce services to economic development projects. And by that, I should back up and say, by that, I mean when there is a company being recruited into the state or into the county, when there are companies here that want to expand in the county and hire more people, build onto their building, add a rail line, things like that, that's an economic development project. And so when those things happen and new jobs are being created, you've got to have that conversation with the workforce professionals at the start of the conversation. You can't wait until the announcement happens to then turn to the workforce system and to the career centers and say, okay, well, we need 200 people. We're starting to hire this afternoon. That's just not the way it works. That doesn't make the workforce system, it just doesn't make them effective. And then that looks bad ultimately on the workforce system itself. So we want to make sure that the two are aligned at the very start so that those conversations are being had throughout so that the workforce system has time to put some strategies together, some recruitment strategies looking at transitional skills and different target populations to pull into these potential jobs that are going to be happening once the project is announced.
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
How would this new board pull in those persons that you just mentioned? How would they,
The recruitment strategies?
how would you recruit differently than what we're recruiting presently?
Well, currently there's a lot of, and I've got some supporting data. In many cases, the economic development system is not talking to the workforce development system. Not in every case, but in many cases that's not happening. So an economic development project, a recruitment, let's use Chatham County as an example. VinFast was announced and there was very little conversation with anybody, and they're hiring 12,000 people, 7,000 people. The workforce system needed to be a part of that conversation from the very start because they're going to start hiring in March. So a workforce system that is working seamlessly and in lockstep with the economic development system would be able to say, tell us what those occupations are right now and what skills are needed right now. So we can go out and look at all of the different target populations that might be a good fit. It could be people that are in other positions, people that have transitional skills. It could be people who were laid off at another position within 35 to 55 miles. It could be former offenders. It could be migrant and seasonal workers. It could be any number of target populations, but it takes time for staff to go out and meet with those groups to talk to them about the potential jobs and to get them ready to do assessments, skill assessments, and then to get them ready for those jobs.
Could we give you a mic?
Thank you. So, yeah, you took my mic. So right now there's a big firewall between the Economic Development Partnership and the confidentiality of projects back to the workforce providers. So the conversation you just described, the situation you just described, would require both a policy and an operational shift by, and we've just got our economic developer walking in here, so he can speak to this better than I can. But confidentiality of projects is a priority, is it not, Mr. Ward? And the Economic Development Partnership will not share information about projects. The community college is an active partner. We don't find out about our contribution or role until the announcement or near the announcement officially. We don't get official notification until
The actual community college is not, but the community college system does.
community college system is, but the folks that are at the level you're describing, this would require a major shift, major change. So if I'm understanding that right, that's a significant move in a different direction. Is that what I'm hearing?
It is a shift because
Okay.
we want economic and workforce development to be working lockstep from the very beginning. We want workforce to have representation at those meetings with employers from the very beginning. And it's not just the economic development partnership, it's even local county economic developers, regional and county economic developers who need to have the conversations. If I go back to this map, I can give an example of a project in Zone 4, which is the Sandhills region, where the regional economic developer called me and said, I don't know who to call because the turnover is high, or I've invited 3 people to a meeting and none of them showed up, 3 workforce people to a meeting and none of them showed up. It wasn't Lumber River, by the way, just so you know. But workforce boards within his prosperity zone that are being invited, they don't know, they don't, that the workforce system has not been a part of those conversations in the past. So absolutely, you are correct. This is a shift. in procedure, in operations, and in expectations.
Could I make a comment for the record?
Use the mic, make sure, put the mic closer.
Can I make a comment for the record? The Scotland County Economic Developer is a member of the board as a private sector business owner as well. And we also have the economic developer for Hope County is a member of the Lumber River Workforce Development Board. So I can appreciate the example that you're giving us from Chatham County, you said. However, that does not apply certainly for our commissioners here. This does not apply to our board. So we have 2 economic developers from the region that are members of the board. Now, granted, they may not be able to tell us specifics on any deals, but on a local level, we do have a connection between the workforce development professionals and the economic development in the region.
Thank you for that. There is an expectation that there is an economic developer represented on every workforce board. And while that is the expectation, that does not mean that there is an alignment of services. So I'll share some more information about that in just a minute. So talking about the overall goal of the state workforce system being aligned with the state economic development system, it is, again, it's not mandating that there are 8 boards. We just need to be better about aligning our services. The funding, this is some of the things that many of you have shared, many other county leaders have shared, and they've asked these questions, and they're good questions. The funding does not change at all because of realignment. A county is allocated a certain amount of money based on a federal formula. That federal formula is also used to determine how much money each state receives. So the only thing that would change is if the federal budget changed. And of course, this year it changed too. Last year, North Carolina received $7 million less than the year prior. And this year we are just under an additional $6 million budget cut at the federal level. Regardless, the federal formula doesn't change.
Dr. Harris, could I just clarify something? And just to make sure, for the record, this is Jay Todd. I'm the chair of the Workforce Development Board, and I've been a participant as a private sector business volunteer now for more than 10 years. What I know about what you just said, we use what's called the fair share formula at the local level that's recommended by the state. However, we can modify that formula at the board level. So this is not, in fact, a in stone requirement. So I want everybody to understand from Scotland County, from the commissioners, that this board has control of those funds. So this is not something that's just a rubber stamp pass through. There's a fiduciary accountability and responsibility for the board members comprised of whatever counties, if it's 8 counties, 10 counties, or 1 county. They determine how these dollars are allocated. We generally use the fair share formula that comes from the state. That's what we generally use. We have, at least on one occasion, elected because of use of the money and performance and different things that were happening in the local area to modify that formula and give one county something different. So that the board does have the ability to do this. And I think this is part of the WIOA statutes as well. So this is the purpose of WIOA, is to have local representation. So the idea is that the more local the representation is, it's probably going to be better at deploying the resources as opposed to it being administered from the state level. So again, not to argue, but I think it's really important to clarify.
No, you're absolutely correct. Right.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. At the state level, the federal level gives the state the funding using the same formula that each county is given their funding. That county in this particular, you got 5 counties, all 5 of those counties, the funding for those 5 are given to the your administrator is council of governments, and not all boards have a council of governments as an administrator, but in this case it is. So all of the funding of those 5 counties goes to the board. The board determines and has oversight of those funds. So they use the funds for the priorities that they've set, the strategies that they've set, and their strategies going forward. We don't have control over that. That's why it is local control of the funds.
Just to get clarification on that, so Scotland County, let's use some round numbers. Scotland County could be allocated $100,000, and the current workforce board or the future consolidated workforce board could choose to give us less money than what the feds or the state says that we have, because the current region needs more. Just want to make sure I'm clear.
Be less or more.
Less or more. Yeah, absolutely.
But if we were allocated $100,000 by fed or state, the Lumber River Workforce Board could say, no, Scotland County only uses 75. We're going to give that 25 to Robinson. Or Scotland County needs more. We're going to give them 25 more. And so and then when we get a larger group, that there's more people to possibly need more or give more. Is that fair?
Say that last part again.
Right now, there's how many counties?
5.
5. There's going to be how many in the new one?
That's up to you
10.
guys.
No, if we go by the
Proposal from the state.
if we go to the prosperity zones, there's going to be 10. So we've got 5 counties pooling money and possibly getting more or less. Chances are you would be a lower percentage of 5. If you got 10 counties now, the chance is Scotland County could get less money because the other 9 now need it.
Increased
Or-
competition for the
Or
resources.
we
that
could
the
get
board-
more because those other 9 don't need it. You gotta look at it both ways.
So in your scenario, you're saying that 10 counties become one board, become one board. 10 counties get funding. So that funding is determined by the local board, and the board will determine what the priorities are for 10 counties, just like they would for 5 counties.
But the state and Fed says Scotland County is allotted 100,000 that now
Still,
goes to
right.
that 10-person board or that 5 county board right now. A
Right,
lot
it
of
goes
money
to
is
the board.
given
Right,
For that board to make a decision.
right. It goes to the board.
And here's a concern I have.
I didn't hear.
His
the whole-
question is, the makeup of the board will be larger now, and is it going to be more towards the larger markets?
More population, more board seats for larger areas, I think is what we're talking
If
about.
that's the truth, it's a fair statement. Could a Cumberland County have more board seats than Scotland County?
Not if Scotland County is represented well on the board.
Is every county allotted the same number of seats?
No, not at all. There is a federal formula for what the makeup of the board. That board is 51% employers. And regardless of, just like in this scenario, you've got Durham County as a single county board. They still have to have 51% employers, and then the rest of the makeup that's federally mandated. That's what the board makeup is. The chief local elected official appoints board members. So in your scenario of a 10 county workforce board, there are 10 chief local elected officials who can appoint board members to make sure that there is representation on the board, as long as that board meets the requirements of the federal mandate of the board makeup. Now,
Question is quantity of members per county. So would that change, or how would that be defined? Is that population driven?
no, that is back to the there's
I apologize. I thought it carried over the microphone. So the quantity, the actual number of members on the board per county, how would that be derived?
So let's go back to the scenario of 10 counties versus 5, just like it is with 5 now. There are 5 counties on the current workforce board, 5 counties represented. Each of those chief local elected officials has an opportunity to appoint members to that board. The board chair and the board have that's the board makeup. So it is the chief local elected official in each of those counties that determines who gets appointed to the board.
I
So-
understand, but there's a number. There's a number of appointees
Right.
per county. The question is that going to change, or is it proportionate to the populations involved? So right now, I think there's 4 from Scotland County. Okay. So I don't know what the breakout is by county. Is it evenly distributed currently? It's
No,
not.
there is no mandate that says that it has to be evenly distributed.
Okay?
And that's our concern, that as a commissioner, when it doesn't have to be evenly done at the present time. Okay, at the present time, Scotland County has 12% representation. That determines there's a certain number of people. The new alignment with 10 members, we would have 4%. So our representation on the board would be diluted by substantially 2/3.
It is okay. First of all, let me state there is no mandate saying that there will be 10 counties in the new workforce board.
Okay,
You got all the local officials from the counties make that determination. So we're using 10 counties as a hypothetical, but just so you know that.
thank you.
So if we are in 10 counties, just like you are in 5 counties, it's the chief local elected officials who determine the board makeup. If you all decide as chief local elected, how many people are on your board right now? 22. If you all decide that you want 25 members on your board, you all decide together that that's what you're going to do.
But you all as the board, it's not the county. You don't decide that. The board decides that. So I think it's very important because we have bylaws at the board.
Right.
So, and please, the map that you're showing us over your shoulder has got 10 counties listed in this zone 4. And I think this is what you're proposing. This is what the state is recommending, correct?
This is what the state economic development system
Got it, yeah.
model is.
Yeah. So this is what, when you talk about the realignment, this is what you're recommending for realignment, correct?
We're
that a true
recommending
statement?
aligning with the state economic development
Okay,
system.
so this
We're
isn't
not
10
mandating.
counties chosen at random as a hypothetical. This
Right.
is what we're saying. We've done some studies and we think this 10 county group would match what we're doing for what we call Prosperity Zone 4.
Sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So what would happen?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
What would happen at the board level is this new board would draft bylaws. Those bylaws would say, according to the federal guidelines, you have to have 1 representative from the community college system per county or something. And it would have, it's all in there. It tells you what you have to have. But 51% of the total board for 10 counties, or in our case, 5 counties, must be private sector business representatives. The chair must be a private sector business person. This is in the federal law. State has nothing to do with it. So we would be looking for people, but the board itself could say, well, Scotland County is small in the grand scheme of these 10 counties, so we're going to give you 2 private sector board seats. That makes sense. And it kind of makes sense in terms of the population. So every board member has 1 vote. You don't get extra votes because you're from a small county, or your vote is not discounted because you're from a larger county and there's 10 private sector business representatives there. So to Dr. McInnes's point, definitely the representation is going to look different in a 10 county board than a 5 county board.
Chairman, can I ask a question, please? So you're on a track, Dr. Harris, that I think will help us a lot in understanding the process, because I think there's some confusion about the process, and this will help me anyway. So the county commissioners are charged with making a decision of whether to stay or go forward into a new realignment. So when you talk about it may not be 10 counties, maybe a different configuration within this prosperity zone. Okay. So it could be 10, it could be 8, it could be 5. Okay. So who sits at the table to make that decision about what that configuration looks like? So when you said, you talked about they or y'all, I was trying to figure out who the pronouns are. So if the county commissioner said, yes, we're open to a different configuration, then who's in the room to decide what that looks like?
Okay, great question. So let's say that this does end up hypothetically, please, as a 10 county board. There should be 10 chief local elected officials in that room. The chairman of the commission for each of those 10 counties are in that room making a decision. They come up with what is called a consortium agreement, and that agreement lays out how this new board functions, how the representation of the boards, who gets to be the workforce chief local elected official. So of those 10 counties, there's going to be one chosen of all those 10 counties to be the workforce chief local elected official. That's the person who ultimately receives communications from the Department of Commerce, from the State Workforce Board, from the NC Works Commission. They're the person that is sort of the liaison to all of the county commission chairs. Those 10 chief local elected officials are the ones in the room making those decisions.
All right, so help me help everybody else. So the question at hand for the Board of Commissioners is whether to stay with the current board configuration, workforce board configuration. So it's a binary situation, it's a choice, or leave it and join a different group within this prosperity zone. I mean, I guess the question is, what is the question and what is the decision they're supposed to be making?
Okay, so what the NC Works Commission, the NC Works Commission, the State Workforce Board, is asking that all chief local elected officials by county, because the county chief local elected county chair is the one who determines where they lie as far as workforce systems. Workforce systems are not aligned specifically with a COG. They are not aligned specifically with a community college, a nonprofit, or their own county government. They are a workforce system. It is a workforce system. There's a statewide workforce board system. And so each county is to make a decision on whether they want to be realigned with the economic development, the state economic development system, or stay where they are. That's the decision to be
choice.
made.
That's
That's
the
the
choice.
decision. Or join a completely different board. Now, I don't know that that would be approved, but
So approved by whom?
the NC Works Commission, which is the state workforce board.
So ultimately, the decision by this commission, does it require additional approval beyond, I mean, the Workforce Commission, do they put a seal of approval? I'm walking through the process.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's let's see. No, that's a fair question. So the NC Works Commission, again, did not come out of that study and mandate that there be 8 workforce boards. They put together guiding principles for each county to consider. And if I go back to that map, for Lumber River, you're looking at 10 counties, 1 prosperity zone. It could be that each one of those counties, including Moore and Montgomery, which are a part of a completely separate workforce board, join forces within this does this have a point? Within that prosperity zone. And in fact, they have. So that those county transitions will be happening because they have chosen to join forces with Mid Carolina Workforce Board, which is out of Cumberland. So the question for Scotland County is whether or not they want to be a part of an aligned workforce board system that's aligned with economic development. If they want to stay within their current workforce board, entirely up to you guys. It just and that it's entirely up to Scotland County what they decide to do. And either way, you all are not in a county that is some of the guiding principles I was mentioning are things like Columbus County, a county that overlaps into a separate prosperity zone. Those are things they're trying to eliminate. Single county workforce boards, that doesn't promote regionalism, which is part of economic development. Things like that. Counties that have, or prosperity zones that have 6 workforce boards, we want to at least reduce that to 3 or 2. So those are the guiding principles that they're really pushing for the local elected officials to think about. Scotland County does not fit into any of those issues. So you could determine, we're going to stay with Lumber River, we're going to join Capital Area, we're going to join Mid Carolina, we're going to expand Lumber River into the whole prosperity zone. But I believe that Lumber River made that choice, that they didn't want to do that. And so that is the question at hand for the Scotland County Commissioners.
Sorry for asking so many questions, but so does the current configuration of the 5 counties in the Lumber River Workforce Development Board satisfy those guiding principles?
They meet all of the guiding principles, other than there are 4 workforce boards within that prosperity zone.
So the real issue is the stragglers.
Well, those other counties have already had their meetings and they've already made their decisions.
Okay.
We can't hear you. Tim, could you speak up? We can barely hear you. Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Bladen. They are in discussions, and we have not formally received their letter, so I'm not at liberty to say, but yes, they've made decisions. Yes, the chief local elected official appoints the board members, and they make the decision together on how the makeup of the board looks. The county commission chair.
Actually, Dr. Harris, if I can interject, and I've actually read the statute, and that's why, as the chair of the board, I feel like I have to know what we're supposed to do. So I don't mean to keep interrupting, but the board decides. So yes, initially the consortium may decide the initial composition of the board, but the board in their bylaws, they have to adopt the bylaws. Chief elected official has to certify that, but still, no, the chief elected official does not decide how many seats are per county. That's not correct.
They do actually. The county, it's the county commission, the chief local elected officials that appoint the board members. And so
They're appointed by the counties.
there is a federal mandate on the board makeup, and there's a minimum. I think it's 19.
Not by county. It's not by county.
It
at
is
all.
not. It's not by county.
Yeah. So, and I think it's
The
very
federal
important for
law.
you to know the actual law, because there's some implication that all this stuff is just laid out for you, and that's not at all true. It's designed by nature for it to be flexible for the local areas, because what happens in Dakota, North Dakota or something is going to be different than what happens in North Carolina. So I think it's really, really important that you understand that this is designed at the federal level to give a lot of control to the local area.
Correct.
Because every area is different, has different needs. That's the point of it. So in terms of how many seats each county has, that's not a decision that's in the law at all. The only thing it says is 51% of the members in whatever local area is defined have to be private board sector representatives, and there are certain other groups that have to be represented by law.
So the federal mandate does say who needs to be represented on the board. It's up to the local level to determine who that is and how many they want for that, as long as they meet the federal law that says 51% have to be business. There has to be education, vocational rehab, union representation. That is the federal law. It is up to the chief local elected officials to determine what that looks like.
Crawford, can I ask a question?
Yes, you
I
may.
don't mean to interrupt, but
Go ahead.
if you were going to say something, please
No,
go ahead.
go ahead first. I can go later.
So I'm trying to play this out so that everybody can see what the decision tree looks like. Okay, and what the implications are for the choices. All right. So it's a binary situation. Either you stay or you realign. All right. Now, it's a complex problem because it depends on what the other 4 counties do in terms of staying with the COG and the current configuration or realigning. Are the rules from Commerce that staff have to follow going to be changing after this realignment occurs? So are there changes or reinterpretations that are going to impact boards, or are the rules staying exactly the same? And are we going to continue to be able to go down the same path as we currently are? So does that question make any sense?
I think it does.
Okay.
So let's say hypothetically Scotland decides to join with all the other counties, and we have a new board formed of 10 counties. Say it's only 6. It doesn't matter. That newly formed board has to sit, the chief local elected officials from those counties have to sit down and discuss what that new board looks like, come up with all the rules that they are required to do. Who's going to be the administrative entity? Who is going to be appointed to the board? Who is, all of those things. This is a great opportunity for not only the geographic realignment, but the realignment of the functional operations of workforce in the state. We want it to be, and this goes back to the conversation we were having with economic development earlier. This is an opportunity to be more closely aligned with economic developers and their projects so that we're able to make sure that we're providing services to both job seekers and employers at a much more effective and efficient way.
So I got that. Are the rules going to change? So are the rules, the monitoring?
No, it's in the law. It's in the WIOA law.
Let's hear it from Dr. Harris.
Yeah,
I'm giving her the opportunity to answer the question, but thank you. So definitively, if we stayed, now you talked about scenario 1 leaving, but if we stayed, Are the rules going to change, stay the same, or are new rules going to be imposed?
As of July 1st of 2023, when the newly formed boards come into play, and North Carolina looks differently, we are using these next 9 months to look at operations, functions, monitoring. There are rules, there are requirements that we have to follow per federal guidelines, but operationally, how North Carolina does that can look different. And those are the conversations we'll be having over the next 9 months. So we have already had some of those conversations initially with county elected officials. For instance, one of the boards that is adding about 5 counties asked about more local, regional sub-regions, I guess is really the best way to put it. So for instance, well, let's just use Wake County. Right now, Capital Area Workforce Board, well, before July 1, they were a 2-county board. They just recently took on 2 more counties. So their workforce board laws and operations change. If they were to take on these 3 light blue counties as well, they could decide that that's going to be a sub-region and let the community college in that region be the Title I provider and support that workforce board with services in that region, because that's who they serve. Currently, there are community colleges across the state that are Title I providers. I don't know how many, but in many cases that is the situation. And then in other cases, they have contractors that do that work. Some boards have 1 provider throughout their entire workforce board region, which, you know, has its pros and cons as well. But yes, that could change because you've got 10, or what did I say? If 10 counties, you've got 10 leaders that talk about what that's going to look like, and 10 county chief local elected officials to make those decisions.
Okay, Dr. Harris, I wanted to ask this question at the end of your presentation, but I'll ask it now. What will happen if a workforce development board does not join the realignment? Can they join it at any time? And will there be any negative ramification if one does not join initially?
That's a fair question. Absolutely. No, there is no ramification if Scotland County decides to stay with Lumber River. You're already a part of a workforce board. You can stay that way because you're not in that situation that the guiding principles talk about. If you decide at a later time, it's just a county transition, and that happens all the time.
Okay.
We already had, even just at the very beginning of these conversations, when we started talking about this at the state level, we had counties raise their hand and say, yeah, we want to change. And so it really has not been a difficult conversation with any county at all. Assistant Secretary Chet Mottershead and I have been the leads on going out and talking to counties, and we haven't had, you know, if I was getting a lot of pushback, I might back down, but I'm not getting pushback from counties. They want to see change.
Thank you.
So any other questions? We are the only counties that we're talking to are counties that have in some way, shape, or form affected by the guiding principles. And the reason that the Sandhills region, those counties, are because there are 4 workforce boards represented in 1 prosperity zone. And so that's why we're talking to the counties here. In other cases, where the counties overlap into other prosperity zones and single county boards, we have not had pushback. Initial pushback perhaps, but then we were able to explain the goal of this is to align the state workforce development system. It has nothing to do with the performance of the local boards. And that's another thing that we keep hearing a lot of questions about. This has nothing to do with how the boards are performing. This is about the governor's goal to align the state workforce system with the state economic development system so that we're in better compliance with the federal law and that we're aligned with what the state statute statutes say from back in 2015 with the prosperity zones.
And this may be a little bit on the technical side. It looks like whatever the decision is, there will have to be a meeting of the chair of each board. And I say that assuming no one from COG wants to leave.
This isn't related to a COG. It's related to the workforce boards.
Workforce development.
Thank you.
But with that, that would mean like Columbus County, if they do move out of the workforce development, but we're there with Wilmington. At that point in time, they're not contiguous, so they could not move to mid-Carolinas.
Bladen County makes them contiguous. And so assuming Bladen County moves and joins with Mid-Carolina.
I'm assuming if they did not. At that point in time, Columbus could join with this workforce development.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But with that, so there's still going to have to be any decision, or if Richmond County goes to Mid-Carolina, there's still going to have to be that redevelopment on
Correct.
the existing workforce development board, reallocation of board members and things like that, which will trip the change in bylaws. And do the bylaws have to come back out to the counties for final approval?
Generally, we work with the counties. I know the minister will tell the counties, for example, if we have vacancies, we try to fill those, and there's a process for that. But it could affect, I would say the biggest impact from the law standpoint would be you might not have enough private sector business representatives if you lose a county.
Right.
Because generally those slots are harder to fill because they're private sector
And
people.
that's unfortunate
Yeah.
that those are the ones that are harder to
The
fill.
hardest ones to fill because people in the private sector are doing this on a volunteer basis. So I'm here and this is not part of my day job.
Right.
So that's one reason I'm engaged is I'm not going to do this and waste my time if I'm not going to know what I'm expected to do. So, but yeah, that would definitely mean the board would have to make sure that we're in compliance with the law, with the representation on the board. There would have to be new people appointed. Likely there would be increase in seats for the counties that are left at the private sector level.
So with this, there's going to be a change. There's most likely going to be a change in the workforce development board. That's going to have to be some restructuring over the next 9 months,
Correct.
regardless.
For us, if nobody left at Lumber River, there would be no change for us. But if one county leaves, or if we got another county to join,
Yeah.
then yes, you're correct.
Mr. Alford, can I ask another question, please?
Yes, you could.
At the end of the day, we've left out, to me, the most important part, the workforce centers, because we're supposed to be serving the citizens. And the people that need the services the most are the ones that are looking for jobs and the employers that are looking for help. So how do you see new rules, new process, reconfiguration, improving the service in the centers? Because one of the challenges right now, which you and I have talked about, is the division that exists between the contractors and the Department of Commerce employees that are under the Wagner-Pizer Act. So will this configuration change any of the rules or give the workforce development boards a new set of tools to better ensure that there's a smooth coordination and more effective results in these workforce centers?
I love this question. Thank you for asking it. So this realignment in and of itself does not do that. This is a geographic change. Internally, the Department of Commerce and the Commission, because they're looking at policies and operational guidance that will change because of this, does give us that opportunity. When we have newly formed boards, these conversations have to happen. One of the things that we've really seen as sort of a eye-opening red flag is when workforce board staff tell their staff not to talk to state staff at a career center. Don't worry about what they're doing. We're doing what we're doing. We're doing what we're told. They're doing what they're doing. That is not effective. And this is what we've talked about. That's just not effective. That's not the way it's meant to be. The integration of those services is what is supposed to be happening. So one of the boards, the currently Mid-Carolina Workforce Board, is actually putting together and working with our regional operations director to put together the business services team approach. That means that is very integrated. It's board staff, state staff, contractor staff, community college representatives, the economic development representative in the region. They're a team and they work together and they have a strategy. That board has one strategy for business services, for employer outreach, employer services. Everything is employer driven, which is what WIOA says it should be. And so they're working as a team and going out. The business service rep for that board goes out and meets with employers, with the community college representatives, and comes back and talks to the career center staff. And this also includes our veteran services staff, our foreign labor services staff, our former offender services staff. We don't have a lot of those right now, but we still have them in this region, so that everybody is a part of the conversation, and then that determines who goes out. So there's no duplication of services.
So the board selects and contracts with the operator of the center, correct?
Yes, the board does that.
All right, so there is an operator of the center. The current challenge is the authority of that operator, it matching with its responsibility. So it's got responsibility for center oversight, but it does not have the authority to direct the commerce employees that are stationed there. So is that going to be corrected in this new model that you're describing?
That is our goal. So thank you. Yes, we have different supervisory level, a different supervisor for contractor staff, regardless of who the contractor is, whether it's a private group, a community college, whoever it is. Then we have state staff who are also in those career centers that have different supervisors, because those are state level people. The goal is to have the integrated service delivery so that everybody's on the same page. We have regional operations directors, the one per prosperity zone at the state level, who oversee the state staff. They work directly with the directors, the workforce board directors, to make sure that those things are integrated. It has not been done well in the last number of years. In some cases it has, but this new model, and what we're hoping is that going over the next 9 months, we're going to have a whole lot of changes internally with operational guidance. We're going to have a lot of changes, not just geographically, but how we do business. And this is the opportunity to do that, regardless of whether Scotland County makes a decision one way or another. Either way, those conversations have to be had. I didn't understand the question.
Why can't we fix that, implement that now, and go ahead and do it?
Yeah, I can't answer that question. I have been a part of this system for 4.5 years. It was like that before I got here. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that before WIOA, it was very much a social services function. In fact, some of the workforce boards are still fall under the Department of Social Services in some counties. And so when you look at it from the social services perspective versus the business perspective, employer-driven perspective, it's very different. It's a different mindset. It's a different mindset. And so I think that transition has just taken a long time. At the same time, we've had these conversations, or not we, but other people before me have had conversations about this realignment for business, and it just hasn't happened for whatever reason. I can't give you an answer to that, but right now, I know that the governor's priority, the NC Job Ready initiative, includes aligning economic and workforce development to be compliant with federal law. The Department of Commerce strategic plan, First in Talent, that Secretary Sanders came up with is, and it not alone, but with many partners, talks about the alignment of workforce and economic development. The NC Works Commission's strategic plan talks about the alignment of workforce and economic development. And so everybody wants to see better alignment, better services to the employers, because ultimately the job seekers get better trained and get better jobs. It should be. I mean, those conversations are going to be had regardless. One thing I will mention too, since you mentioned that, one of the things we found back in November, when we knew that the commission was going to talk about this study, just a couple of days prior, we called a chief local elected officials summit. Well, actually, the United States Department of Labor called a chief local elected official summit. We had that in Raleigh, and asked the commission chair for each of the counties to come to a meeting to talk about WIOA and the expectations around workforce. And what we learned from that, because our agency, even though we are to have better, we are the state workforce agency, we are to have better relationships with the chief local elected officials than we do. And that's one of the other things that we have to do a better job of. But in that summit, what we learned is that 98% of those county commissioners had no clue that there was a career center in their town. From that, the county commissioners asked us to please give them more information about workforce. I talked to the chair and the director of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, and we did another session. I think it was back in April, we did a meeting. They asked us to attend a meeting to talk about WIOA and the workforce system, and we did do that, especially around their roles and responsibilities. The chief local elected official has the fiscal responsibility for the funding, the federal dollars that are spent, and most of them didn't know that. I've just been asked, in fact, yesterday, the association asked me to present at a conference that's coming up in August for county commissioners to talk again a little bit further about the workforce system and their role and responsibilities in that. So it's good that we're able to get more information out to the county commissioners so that they understand what workforce is, what their role and responsibility is around it, and how they have a say in what that looks like at the local level. I've gone back to the map of the prosperity zone model and the bulleted agencies that provide services to each of those prosperity zones. They are our partners in economic and workforce development, in training and education, in vocational rehab. They are the ones that support all economic development and employer-related services. All of these agencies have one representative per prosperity zone. We are asking that the state consider, that the local elected officials consider joining forces in an alignment to the rest of the state resources that are put out per prosperity zone. Did that answer your question? No, that's not the case at all. And so thank you for asking that. So for instance, there is one economic development partnership, the EDPNC, one economic development representative for the Prosperity Zone. Now, Mark here, one of the Rockstar County economic developers, does work at the county level. When he has a project that is an expansion that's happening or or is contacted by EDPNC about a recruitment effort that's happening, they're going to talk to him and he's going to be the primary person at the county level. But the EDPNC representative is the person who is working with perhaps a company in Bladen County or Richmond County or even Hoke County or Robeson County, working with employers in those other counties. Within a 35 to 55 mile radius is where those employees are going to come from for the job creation. So we want to make sure that EDPNC representative, that vocational rehab representative, that veteran services rehab knows who to call and has one person to contact to be at the table for those for the workforce conversations. Currently, right now, there would be 4 people at the table. And if you've got 5 to talk about confidentiality of projects, if you've got an economic development project happening in Zone 4, you're not going to invite 4 workforce people at different levels, whether it's a career center manager, a workforce board director, a chief local elected official, or a board chair. You're not going to invite 4 people to that, additional people to that meeting. There needs to be one representative that really knows the full strategic level of workforce in that region to be at that table. Correct. The NC Works Commission gave that deadline. July 31st is the deadline for counties to make their decision. Whatever that decision is, there's a letter that just is a letter of intent. You're going to stay with your, it is an official letter that says that you've had the discussion. These are all the partners that we included in that conversation, and this is what our decision is. The commission has a meeting on August 10th where those letters will all go to the commission and they'll review those, not at the meeting, but they'll be reviewing those to make sure that any of those county transitions that are requested, that they put, well, frankly, our team on it at DWS to work through those county transitions.
Go back to the previous map. This is Mark Ward, and that one. And I'm just stating this to give information. I'm not giving my thoughts or recommendation or anything, but the comment is you would have different partners that are representing different areas. Scotland County is trying to partner with Moore County because of the PGA that was announced. So we're trying to get corporate individuals. USGA, I'm sorry. And we want the manufacturing in Scotland County, of course, we know because of that ties. So right now, today, if we were to have a company that the corporate office was in Moore County and the manufacturer was in Scotland County, we would have double the individuals there today. For example, we could have somebody from Department of Transportation will be here. Actually, the biggest one is going to be public instruction and industrial expansion. So I would still have somebody from our current area with the COG, but when that employer starts talking, they're going to talk to somebody totally different in Moore County. With the potential of a merge with Moore County being with Scotland, then we would only have one person to go to versus right now I would have 2 individuals to speak to one subject matter.
I think this is what you're talking about. So Moore County being as a separate
List of the people.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, Moore County is in a separate workforce board area now than Scotland County. If you're working on initiatives, economic development initiatives, strategic planning initiatives, things like that, regional things, yes, you would have two different workforce boards represented there. Okay, I've got some more slides.
You can go with your next slide.
So again, some of the key factors around realignment funding. Funding always gets us started on get money talks. So the funding, as we stated earlier, there is a federal formula for how those dollars are allocated to the local counties, and it is the local board that determines how those funds are used. One of the things that we also have heard questions about based on local conversations is that everybody will lose their jobs, career centers will close, and that is not actually the case. The career centers will stay open. There are no closures of career centers planned as a result of alignment. There is still certification of career centers that happens from the commission. Those certifications are done between the commission and the local workforce board. And so if there are some that are not certified for one reason or another, the local board will work to fix whatever it is that is missing and make that happen. So the career centers will still be in place. We don't foresee massive layoffs. What we would like to see is that opportunities where there might be 3 different boards in one prosperity zone, and those 3 boards consolidate into one workforce board. You've got 3 youth program managers, for instance, or 3 adult and dislocated worker program managers. What we would like to see is, because those people are already familiar with the workforce system, that they transition into a new position, preferably to be outreach to employers. So we're actually doing that job. Not all board staffs have a business services representative that is going out and meeting with businesses, which is the #1 goal of WIOA. So we don't foresee any massive layoffs. We hope to see better training on transitional positions. And we see how that goes. I don't know what that looks like, because we don't know what the new board makeup is going to look like yet. Any questions on that? Okay. Some of the data that I wanted to share, that I have been sharing based on questions from county leaderships, is the same data that the commission committee asked for in their study. So these are specific to that. Going back to funding, they asked about the funding. Oh, I didn't do that. Let's see. See if I can make that work again. So the funding level, again, like I mentioned earlier, doesn't change. So we are in Scotland County last year, 154,000. What this chart shows is that based on the federal formula, that funding does not change. It doesn't go down. It doesn't go up. It's determined at the local level. But workforce realignment does not affect the federal funding to the local level. Another thing they asked for was commuting patterns. What are the commuting patterns for each of the counties and within each of the prosperity zones? And so what they looked at was what is happening within each prosperity zone. So if we look at Scotland. Oh. Oh yeah, it went away.
How's that?
Okay, awesome. Thank you for saying that. I'd keep talking. So the commuting patterns for this region and for Scotland County specifically is, just some of the data around that. 7,000 residents of Scotland County commute to another county for work. That's 67%. 5,800 of them come into Scotland County from other counties. Those are high percentages. So you have to look at that regional approach. Most of those counties that are tied to you are Richmond, Moore, Cumberland, and Hoke. And so those counties, obviously that makes sense, right? Nobody's surprised by any of that, I hope. Those are the counties that surround Scotland and that where the employment base is. So back to the economic development. One of the things that they also asked for is, where does the local county fall when it comes to economic development? Where is workforce tied to economic development and where isn't it tied to economic development? So by county, we said, well, we could look at a long list of things like our rock star. He's working on a lot of projects, but in the past 5 years, can you mention how many economic development projects you've worked on in the last 5 years? Probably a bunch. So to narrow that down for the study, we took a sampling and said, let's look at just those economic development projects that received state economic incentives. Building reuse, JDIG, 1NC, any kind of those building public utilities, any of those state economic development, state economic incentives, let's just look at those and use those as our sampling. So in Scotland County, between 2017 and 2021, there were 7 projects that received, 7 employers who received economic incentives. We cross-referenced those. They had us cross-reference into our workforce system, NC Works, the online system, and we found that 4 of those companies had received workforce services. That's pretty good. They received them, not all 7 of them, but 4 of them did, which is about half, a little over half. Of those services, they were workforce recruitment, posting the jobs, potentially making referrals and getting people hired for those jobs. Those are the services that were provided to those 4 people versus the 7. Now that is not, again, this is not specifically services provided by Lumber River Workforce Board. This is overall, because there are other counties and other workforce boards that can provide services to an employer based on their location. There is an employer in Richmond County who works very well with the Anson County Career Center because they're actually closer to that one. And so the Centralina Workforce Board provides services to a Richmond County business. So this is not specific to any board, it's statewide. How many employers received workforce assistance? And it's 4. And those were specifically recruitment. So Scotland County, another thing they asked about was training. What are the training opportunities? Who are the training providers? Richmond Community College, we're fortunate to have Dr. McGinnis here. Richmond Community College serves Scotland County. Because they serve 2 counties, they are Richmond and Scotland, that falls within one workforce board. There are some community colleges that serve up to 3 different workforce boards, which I know is a nightmare. They've mentioned, again, different policies and priorities and funding priorities on training. So Richmond Community College serves both counties, Richmond and Scotland County, which is one workforce board. Surrounding Scotland County are 9 available workforce boards that can contribute to any economic development project within 35 to 55 miles, which is the standard radius for recruitment for jobs. So I mentioned earlier the commission's guiding principles, and we've already talked about a lot of that already. Expanding the local board boundaries, decreasing the single county workforce boards, making sure that there are counties that do not overlap into other prosperity zones. There's a lot of missed opportunities when that happens. I'll say that, but that doesn't affect you all at all. A flexibility for administrative entities. Again, I think I said earlier that not all workforce boards are tied to a council of governments. Many of them are. Some of them are tied to a community college. Some of them are tied to nonprofits, and some of them are tied to local and county governments. So the benefits and you all have already asked a lot of these questions. There are no fewer participants served. What we want to go for is more participants served. The career centers stay open. They stay staffed. We want to see more outreach to employers so that we can make sure that those services are provided. The allocations don't change per the per the federal mandate, the control still stays at the local level. Like Jay Todd said, it's the local board that sets those priorities with the chief local elected officials on how things are done and how services are provided at the local level. That does not change. As far as administrative efficiencies, in the cases where we have already counties that are in the process of transition, they're going from one board to another board, those board counties and the staffing at that level, we're hoping that those transition into other positions within the newly formed board. It could be that there are 2 or 3 bookkeepers, finance controllers, those positions may or may not transition into it, because who needs 3 of them just with a consolidation of a board? So those positions may or may not exist down the line, but that is determined at the local level as well. In the packets that I sent earlier, and I think that all of the county commissioners received this, there is a letter from the governor. There is a letter from the Economic Development Partnership CEO, Chris Chung. There is a letter from Secretary Sanders, the Secretary of the Department of Commerce. They are all in support of this realignment. And so the timeline, going back to that question about July 31st, the study started in November. It ended on March 30th when the commission took a vote. They gave us a couple of months to get out to all the counties and have these conversations with the goal of having letters of intent from the counties by July 31st for their August 10th meeting. And then after those letters of intent for county transition, those counties that are asking for a county transition, we will spend the next several months working through that. July 1st is the goal for the July 1st of 2023 would be the formal new board formation. Any more questions?
Commissioners, any of you have any further questions? Is this the end of your presentation?
The end of my presentation, not the end of the questions, I'm sure.
Well, if there are no other question, I just want to thank you so much for coming and presenting to us. All of my questions have been answered. Thank all of you for coming. Yes, we have 2 present, and we have our director, Patricia Hammonds, and we have the COG representative here. Would y'all like to have some comments? David Richardson first, if you care to.
Thank you, Mr. Alford.
Director of our COG.
Thank you, Mr. Alford. I will say, I think we've heard a lot of information this morning. I think Mr. Todd has done a really good job of kind of explaining the COG's concerns. And I think we've heard that from you as the county commissioners as well. Our fear with this realignment is Scotland County's voice getting lost in the shuffle. The economy of the prosperity zones does not match the economy of the Lumber River region with the COG, with workforce development. Rural Scotland County, rural Hoke County, rural Richmond County, rural Robeson County, and rural Bladen County are very different than urban Cumberland County. We have a rural voice. Our rural voice gets drowned out more and more so as time goes by. I think it's essential that that rural voice gets protected. That's why I work at the COG every day to advocate for the rural voice, to make sure our rural voice gets heard. I think Commerce has presented, a best case scenario. I'd encourage you to really think, did Dr. Harris really answer your questions when you ask them? Or did she go around the edges there with those questions? I think you need to consider those long-term relationships that you've had. You know that the COG delivers. You know that our workforce program delivers. When Florence and Matthew happened, our staff were boots on the ground while the work was still going on, trying to find ways to bring additional funding into the region to help us recover. Will that happen if you have a realignment? I don't know the answer to it, but I can tell you the staff is not going to care as much about the region. Our staff cares at Lumber River because we're all from here. It's our homes. We want to improve our region. We do it as a job, but the reason why we do it more so is because we care about our communities, and that's what makes it go forward. I know there's been a lot of questions about the career centers. I share those concerns about our career centers. I'll point out two things that I know that have happened over the past. In Bladen County a few years ago, Commerce wanted to close the NC Work Center. We still have an NC Work Center in Bladen County. The reason why we have an NC Works Career Center in Bladen County today is not because of Commerce. It's because Bladen County, the local workforce development board, your Lumber River Workforce Development Board, and the COG came together to make sure that valuable resource still existed. The second part I'll talk about when it comes to the career centers. Dr. Harris said, we don't have plans with the career centers right now. But I will tell you, one of the presentations that has occurred and one of the issues that has occurred within the past 6 months is that the Department of Commerce Division of Workforce Solutions has undergone a reduction in force. When that reduction in force occurred, they removed staff from the Scotland County Career Center. They were reassigned to the Moore County Career Center. They removed staff from the Robeson County Career Center and the Bladen County Career Center. They were reassigned to the Cumberland County Career Center because Commerce had control over that staff. To me, actions speak louder than deeds and louder than talk. So I would just encourage you, as you're making this decision, consider who really and truly cares about Scotland County, your workforce, improving the economic development. The other thing I will add is we've talked in the presentation about job searches and providing resources to employers. Well, one thing Commerce has not shared with you are the on-the-job training programs that we have continually going on through your workforce board, reaching out to those employers. We just finished a $25,000 on-the-job training with service threads to get staff up to par to meet a local company's need. You know, we are a very different region than the urban part of the state. Part of our economic development is not only bringing in these large, big manufacturers, it's supporting our local committed employers and working with those local committed employers. We work with economic developers. We talk with our county economic developers. They know us. They're working with us on a variety of issues, not just workforce development, but other areas as well. Your COG is here to support you. Yes, the workforce board is part of the COG, but we work together. You get that regional approach. I will say, to me, what this is, it's about doing, and I know Commerce is talking about, it's trying to realign it with economic development, but the definition of rural economic development in our region, I think, is very different than the definition of economic development in Raleigh. And we need to look at what works for our region and not an idea that comes out of Raleigh, because Raleigh does not understand what it is like to live in our part of the state or to work in our part of the state. I'll be happy to answer any questions you'll have. I'm going to turn it over to Patricia, who's our workforce administrator.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. I feel like I don't really need to say anything else after what David shared, but I do want to remind you all something that I shared with you all regarding the guiding principles. Lumber River does not have any concerns regarding the guiding principles. Okay. Just think about that. The commission have provided guiding principles to support this realignment effort, but Lumber River crosses all the T's and dots all the I's. Yes, there's always room for improvement. And as your workforce development board director, you know that, well, Jay, Mark, Dr. McKinnis, and Mr. Alford, you all know how hard I work to make sure that we are focused on quality improvement. And I am dedicated to making sure that if we remain intact, that we will work hard to refine and support these guiding principles that they have provided. So I feel like we are in a great position because we are a 5-county board, and I hope that Scotland County does remain with the Lumber River local area. That's pretty much all I have. I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to serve to serve Scotland County. We will definitely continue to do everything we can until we can't. So, but that's all I have.
Okay, thank both of you. Dale, you have any closing remarks? Tim, Whit, you have any things you need to say at this time? Thank you so much. Well, I want everyone to know that after 35 years on the Workforce Development Board that represents us, and as a commissioner, I strongly recommend at this time that we remain as we are. We're being served very well, and if things change and we need to make a change, I've already asked that question. We can join with no penalties later. But my position is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Thank you. Anybody else want to declare at this time, or you want to wait? And
Are you asking for commissioners or?
yeah, I'm asking for commissioners now.
Okay. Let me say this first.
And you don't have to do it now, as the chairman has
Go
said.
ahead with.
I'm happy to comment. I think the idea that the state has for realignment is a good idea for what Dr. Harris has shared with us, because the state has a lot of inefficiencies with 23 workforce boards. There's no doubt at all that something needs to be different at the state level. 100% agree with that. So more than one thing can be true at once. As it relates to our particular area, we're very lucky that we're not one of those areas that has all of these issues that Dr. Harris shared with us, the guiding principles, I think, that kind of triggered this. So our board is not running afoul of the reasons why this began. So that's one of the reasons for me. But what I was listening for today, and what I've tried to understand as a private sector business person who's not in government, I think that's important, the perspective that we have. And I think that's why it's part of the Title I stuff to begin with. What I was listening for is what's in it for us. So what's the advantage to Scotland County to follow this suggested realignment plan? And today I didn't hear that. There was not a compelling argument that says Scotland County is going to get something different by following that path. So to make a change that's definitely got some risk associated with it, but for no defined benefit, I just don't see a benefit to that. I can certainly understand for the state that having one person to represent one region is more efficient for the state and makes perfect sense. Don't. Yeah.
When an economic developer is helping an employee. Is this on?
Yeah.
When an employer is expanding in a region or being recruited to the region and they're looking at a 35 to 55 mile radius, to your point about having one workforce person in the room, that's critical, because when those economic development projects happen, they're not going to bring 4 different people into a room to talk about one topic, especially when it's a recruitment effort or an expansion that has the confidentiality agreements that have to be signed and adhered to. So that regional collaboration is really the benefit of aligning workforce and economic development.
Yeah, and certainly I understand that, but I still think that's a fairly weak argument as to how does this directly benefit Scotland County? And yeah, I hear you, but we have a pretty good representation around almost that 55-mile radius with the counties that we have now. So for me, I just don't see a reason to go down that path presently. Not to say that it might not be something to consider later, but right now I'm just not seeing it.
I want to thank Jay for his leadership, because he's been the chair of this board for a long time, and I appreciate the passion and the commitment that David and Patricia have for their work and for our citizens. It's very, very real, and it's every day. It's not for show. Here's my concern. I haven't been on the board as long as Mr. Alford. I think you set the record. I've only been on the board for about 11 years. My experience is that we're dealing with a situation where one of our players is also the referee and the rule maker. Commerce sets the rules, and Commerce is a referee, and they're also a player. I can't change that. I'm not being critical. It's just a matter of fact. It's the way the law was drawn up. Wagner Pizer draws it up that way, if I'm not mistaken. So that's beyond our control. The money comes down from the state through the Department of Commerce to the workforce development boards. The rules for administering that money come from Commerce. My concern is we have an opportunity that you may have more leverage right now to cut the best possible deal that you're ever going to get. My concern is a year from now, you're going to be faced without a choice and be put in a position where you're going to have to join, whether you like it or not. That's my concern. Now, I may be looking at it pessimistically. How many staff do y'all have right now? Down to 4 people. How many did we used to have? So we're at half the staffing level we were. Okay? That's a concern. It doesn't diminish the passion, the hard work, the service they're providing. I'm dealing with facts. I'm putting my feelings out of this thing. All right. If this thing is inevitable and the wheels of progress are going to move us in this direction, we need to cut the best possible deal for the region and for the people. I want to see improved service at these workforce centers, and I want to get some commitments from Commerce that things are going to happen. Y'all have an opportunity to get that commitment now, because this is the only leverage you're going to have, is making this decision. If they didn't want this to happen really, really badly, Dr. Harris wouldn't be down here right now making this pitch. Now, I'm not enthused about it personally. because I believe everything that Jay said, and I believe everything that David said about the personal touch that we are going to be able to get, the risk that we take of losing that, because we hadn't talked about the fact this is going to be based in Fayetteville, right? If hypothetically we join this new region, the headquarters would be in Fayetteville. Is that correct?
If the choice were to go with the Mid Carolina
Right,
Workforce
right.
Board, that is based out of Cumberland County.
That would be in Fayetteville. Okay. So y'all have to weigh the pros and the cons, the risk and the benefits objectively and without emotion to make the best possible decision. But cut the best deal you can and get commitments from Commerce that things are going to be better in Scotland County, to Jay's point, and in our workforce center than they are right now. Get that commitment and get it in writing. And do it while you can, because if you wait and it's going to happen anyway, you won't have any leverage.
Thank you, Dale. Anybody else?
The only thing I would add is, and once again, I'm just providing information. I'm not choosing which side, what to do, just giving y'all information to make everything's transparent. And I'm going to start with David's comment, when he said when Florence and Matthew was here, he helped out the region. No, they helped out Robeson County and Bladen County. We didn't have any disaster issue. So we didn't get any help with Florence or Matthew because we didn't need it. Scotland County didn't need it.
I think we got some help.
No, we had 2 residents that flooded during Matthew and Florence. 2 residents.
We got benefit
From the COG, not from workforce development. What was that? For
The city of Orangeburg got several, the county got some, Rayburn had some.
the municipalities got it. Okay.
Lumberton and Bladen counties received a whole lot more.
Okay.
But they need.
Yeah, I don't know of, except for Campbell Soup was the only plant that had to shut down due to Florence and Matthew because of a flood. Yes, there was employees out because of issues, but anyway, that was just one thing. And I didn't know, so I apologize. Wasn't aware of that part. The center's closing, y'all, that wouldn't matter if we were with 10 counties, 15 counties. The state looked at it and said, we got to do a reduction of staff. It had to be done. Lumber River COG had to reduce their staff from 9 to 5. That's going to happen regardless. Did I like it? No. I voiced my concern to Commerce and let them know that here we are, the highest unemployment county in the state, and you're taking employees away from me to give to Cumberland County. I was very vocal with that and honest with the individual, but I understand why. Didn't like it, but that's fine. Hope County changed it, everybody changed it. The biggest thing that I think y'all need to look at is y'all are saying that it's going to be us and Cumberland County is going to get the bulk of it because they're a larger area. Robeson County gets the bulk of it now. Yes, we're one of 5 and you're going to be one of possibly 10, but it's not going to change that we're still going to be a small fish. Scotland County is smaller in size than Robeson County, which is one of the largest in the state. Bladen County, I think, is the largest in the state size. And then Cumberland County with the workforce. So we're going to be number 1 or 2 of the 5 because of the size of the county anyway. If we stay where we're at. And if we go with 10, we're going to probably be 2 or 3 out of 10. So you just need to look at the economies of scale with that. Yes, it could be housed in Cumberland County. It's not housed in Scotland County now anyway, y'all. It doesn't matter. It's one county, the other county. That's the irrelevant part. The thing that I will say is, if I pick up the phone and call Patricia, I get Patricia. That's a positive.
Amen.
That's the thing. Now I will say that. That's not me. I'm telling y'all good and bad and everything. There is relationships. Mr. Todd mentioned what is the advantage. Sometimes you make a change without an advantage. You make a change because you've been doing things the same way for so long and it's been getting results, but maybe you go to another result. You don't replace your roof when it leaks. replace your roof when you think the life expectancy is about to happen. So, like Dr. McKenna said, you get the best deal for you now, not down the road. So you're just going to need to look at where do you want to be? Can we do it with 5, or can we do it with a larger group?
Thank you so much. Now, I think I asked Dr. Harris this question early on. Would there be any penalties or repercussions if we join now or later? And the answer was, based on the facts and figures, there wouldn't be. Is that still correct?
Correct. Now, the formation of the board of any other counties in this region that form a newly formed board,
Yeah.
assuming that Scotland stays where it is, would not be a part of those initial conversations. So if they were to join later, then Scotland County would be a part of potentially a smaller board if other counties were to go to a different board.
Okay.
And then later on, any new board that you decided to join later would then have to have their conversations over again. And that doesn't happen on a monthly basis. That happens
Yes.
at, annual, every other year basis.
That board has to approve you.
Correct.
They might say, we don't want Scotland County.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a
That's
question?
true.
Yes.
I know that you could not answer the question as to what other counties are planning to do, but do you all have any idea of what the other counties that are in our region are planning to do?
From the information we've received, we know Bladen, Robinson, and Hoke are all staying. Scotland County has indicated its intent to stay as well with the resolution you passed in February. Richmond County is still deciding what they want to do. I will tell you the only thing we have heard across the state with realignment is that the realignments that are occurring are going with counties that are one county workforce boards or where there were performance issues with workforce boards. And those counties are not necessarily realigning because of prosperity zones. They're realigning because of COG regions. I will tell you, I think the COG regions are what makes sense. They're geared, they're driven by the local government officials. We're responsive to the local government officials. The COGs were set up by the local governments, not by Raleigh, to address local needs. The prosperity zones are something that was dreamed up in Raleigh. They were dreamed up in Raleigh to do state programs. Yes, Dr. Harris has said there's some of these other folks that are following, but your DOT, which is one of those examples, your DOT work comes through the COG, through the RPO. With your STIP, Commissioner Ivey serves on that board. That does not come through the prosperity zone. Your aging services with Health and Human Services that's on her list, that's something that comes through your COG region, not through your prosperity zone. The prosperity zones, I believe, and it's the position of the COG associates statewide, are too wild, they're too big, and they're too unwilling. The COG Association tried to work with Commerce at the start of the process to do some realignments based upon COG boundaries. Currently, I think it's 13 of this, or 14, it's 14 now, I think, of the 16 COGs provide workforce development services. Of the 16 COG regions, one of the other boundaries match that COG region where that COG does not provide the workforce services. The boundaries for that workforce program match the COG region. None of the existing workforce development boards match the prosperity zones. In the state, Southwest Commission matches the COG boundaries. High Country matches the COG boundaries. Foothills matches the COG boundaries. Land of Sky matches the COG boundaries. Western Piedmont matches the COG boundaries. Cape Fear matches the COG boundaries. Albemarle matches the COG boundaries. Upper Coastal matches the COG boundaries. Cartar matches the COG boundaries. Mid Carolina, which I think it's interesting that Dr. Harris has not pointed out, Mid Carolina, that Commerce is trying to move the Lumber River counties toward, they are engaging with a realignment with Harnett and Sampson and Cumberland currently to match, guess what? Their COG boundaries. Harnett County also does not match Commerce is ideal prosperity zone map, but they've been working on that for a while. There's a couple of COGs I didn't mention, Piedmont Triad and Centralina. Those two COGs have workforce programs. Centralina, Gaston County is not part of their regional workforce board. It's a one county workforce board. Mecklenburg County is not. The other counties, guess what? Not prosperity zone, but COG region. Piedmont Triad, Guilford County is an independent board. Davison County is an independent board. Alamance, Randolph, and Montgomery are in a separate workforce board. My understanding is they're interested in joining, guess what? Their COG workforce board. Triangle J does not provide workforce services, but the counties that are interested in joining together are going with the COG boundaries, not the prosperity zone. If you get from what I'm talking about, yes, I agree there needs to be some realignment. I agree there needs to be some efficiency. I don't think it needs to be with prosperity zones. I think it needs to be with COG regions, which are responsive to the local members, which has that local governance, which has that local oversight. Because ultimately, you, the Scotland County Board of Commissioners, are responsible for those dollars. And if there are disallowed costs that occur, you're the ones that are on the hook, not for those disallowed dollars. It's not Commerce, it's not the state, it's you at the county level. And you know what? By having it at Lumber River, what you get is you get the fact we're accountable to you for everything. So we're going to make sure we don't get disallowed cost, because I don't want to have to call Kevin or Tim Ivy or John Alfred and say, hey, we misspent workforce dollars because Scotland County's got to come up with X amount of money to pay it. You're not necessarily going to get that commitment somewhere else. So that's another thing I think you need to consider, and the potential liability for the county.
I will add that he made an excellent point. There are a lot of workforce boards that are aligned with the COG right now, and they've been aligned with the COG for a long time, and things need to change.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harris. We haven't drafted that letter that has to be in, I don't think, for by the 27th. We haven't done that letter, have we? We did a
There's format
resolution.
There was a resolution that was approved back in March.
Yeah.
There is a draft of the letter that has been provided. That would be the recommendation from the board.
Correct. The resolution that was done back in February addressed concerns at the local board level. They did not address anything that were guiding principles that came out of the study that ended on March 30th. So the resolution it's fine that you signed it, but it doesn't go along with what the study was. So the letter of intent template, I think you all have that, and you all just sign that.
So we will get that letter of intent by the 27th, correctly?
With that, we have a copy of it. We can send that out, and that would depend on take board action to sign.
Yeah.
Either intent to realign to a new zone or to the prosperity zone, or the intent to stay where we are.
Okay.
Would there be a significant issue? The board is scheduled to meet on August 1st. Would that cause a problem if it was sent in on the 2nd? If the board took action on the 1st?
No, if you just send me that in an email, just in writing, I can pass it along to the commission so that they know that you are meeting about it on that point. And Mark did make a good point about the fact that if Scotland were to move, it would have to be approved by where you want to go. And so I would recommend that if you are considering another area, to reach out and talk to those folks if you haven't already.
Thank you so much. Whit, are you still with us? And are you recommending that we, since you are the chairman, do you recommend that we make the decision on August 1st, final? Yes. Today. Well, I need a motion.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Do we do it today or wait till the 1st? Today. So there's a motion. Do I have a second? We have
That is that we remain as we are.
yes. So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor of leaving it as it is?
What was the motion?
The motion was to make the decision today that we would remain as we are, not go to the prosperity zone. So you've heard the motion. Those in favor, would you say aye? Aye. Thank you so much. It's unanimous. Yes. Okay. Yes, it's unanimous. BJ, John Alford, Betty Ghostin, all aye. It's unanimous. We will remain the way we are. Thank you so much. That concludes our
Chair,
business.
offer motion for adjournment.
Yes. Do I have a second? We are adjourned. Thank you.
The board made a final decision on this issue this morning after this 2-hour session.
Yes, there's been a lot of discussion over the past year, and it is our belief as a board of commissioners here in Scotland County that our workforce development board is serving our area very well. And at this time, it is our recommendation that we remain as we are, not join the new prosperity zone. However, the door is still open. If things change, we will make another decision at a later date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Scotland County. I didn't do anything.
It's nice to see you first.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I get a raise for doing my job? Volunteer? Yep.
You did it well.
You get 100% of what I get now, right?